council members voted to advance cannabis lounges in Sacramento, capital of California, setting the stage for a new test case for the region's industry. The ordinance passed by a 5-4 vote, despite weeks of steady opposition from council member Eric Guerra and public health organizations. Guerra, along with representatives from the American Heart Association and the American Cancer Society, raised concerns about the effects of secondhand smoke on the lounge's patrons, employees, and neighbors. More than 100 people filled city council chambers Tuesday afternoon. 41 gave public comments on the ordinance, including business owners and advocates pushing for the program, and public health advocates who opposed it. Elected officials have considered such an ordinance for years. This has been a long haul, Councilmember Katie Valenzuela said during the meeting. The city expects that permits will be issued after the council considers cannabis land use and zoning amendments expected in early 2025, according to city spokesperson Julie Hall. After that point, other administrative steps, including a fee study, will follow. Permits would likely be issued in spring or summer. The vote outcome appeared uncertain until late in the Tuesday meeting. It became clear that Mayor Darrell Steinberg would pass the deciding vote. He expressed his uncertainty and queried the council members who had seen the ordinance through the committee. This is one of the rare instances where my heart and head are not together, Steinberg said. Every public policy decision we make ought to further restrict smoke. But, he continued, when I actually take the arguments the opponents have made here, then no argument does not stand up for me. Ultimately, he said, he was swayed by an issue raised several times throughout the meeting, that homeowners are able to legally smoke cannabis at their own residences, while renters usually cannot due to provisions in lease agreements. Valenzuela said after the meeting that while the passage of the ordinance sets the policy in place for the lounges, the city still needs to complete a study to determine the potential fees for businesses that get permits for on-site consumption. I'm pleased that we're going to try this, Valenzuela said. The headline is, Cannabis Lounge Pilot Program Advances in Sacramento City Council. What's next? My take on this, it's good to see an influential California municipality launch a pilot program to unlock the potential of Assembly Bill 1775, the Cannabis Cafe Bill, which allows cannabis dispensaries to sell freshly prepared food and drinks, as well as tickets to live events. We look forward to helping dispensary owners across the state unlock the potential of AB 1775 by updating their local cannabis ordinances. Hopefully, this will generate new sources of revenue for struggling dispensary operators and provide venues for new approaches to cannabis tourism. As goes California, so goes the world. And hopefully, we will see cannabis cafes providing enjoyable opportunities all across the world in the future. This is Omar Figueroa, lawyer, publisher, and Ganjier instructor, reporting from Sonoma County, California, the traditional territory of the Pomo, Miwok, and Wapo nations for High at 9, high noon Eastern.
This was a big win for them last night, and I saw a bunch of social media videos, Omar, where everyone was cheering, extremely excited about these new opportunities coming to Sacramento, and apparently it was a very narrow vote.
That's right. It was like totally a split decision, and I think what carried the day was empathy for apartment owners, people who don't own their own homes, for renters who are forbidden from ingesting cannabis at home by reason of provisions in the lease agreement which forbid smoking. And so it's not fair that only those who are wealthy enough to own property get to use cannabis at home, and that's what made the difference.
Well, you know what, too, Omar, there's a lot of buildings that even for people that do own their own homes that are in that have shared wall space buildings, a lot of those buildings are no smoking buildings as well. And so it doesn't just only affect renters, but it also affects some homeowners too.
Yeah.
West Hollywood, I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
Jason Beck has some amazing letters. that were written and left on his door from their upset neighbors.
Oh man, I have so many good letters from upset neighbors.
In Sacramento who are going to be able to benefit from this. And the big question I have is, how hard is the government going to make this? Okay. And the opposition that came out from Eric Guerra and several physicians who stepped up, the underlying implication was that smoke is bad because tobacco smoke is bad, rather than dealing with, is cannabis smoke bad? They didn't want to answer that question. And it's still very irritating to me that taking in the analogy here is just that post hoc ergo propter hoc, because there's a correlation here, there's causation, and they really don't want to look at the fact that no one's ever been diagnosed with cancer from smoking weed, let alone from being in secondhand contact with it, where 450,000 people a year die from smoking tobacco.
Facts.
Okay, so this is a hobby horse they ride a lot, and the hobgoblin is smoke. Well, no, it's not enough anymore. You have to look at what is the smoke and what's the actual harm from it, because I can see them require that you have ventilation systems that use just large amounts of cubic feet per minute of air being moved and filtered and all this other shit, when you can walk outside and walk around the corner and smoke your joint. It's just ridiculous, and I'm hoping that they don't put up unnecessary restrictions in trying to open these lounges up, because the clients I've got that are looking for this for revenue, they're struggling right now. They need an increase in revenue, and the first part is in edibles. No one really cares about edibles. It's the smokable products inside a lounge that they're up in arms about. I'm ready to go to the city council and have this discussion and ask them. I know city council members. I've helped them with their campaigns. I want to know, are you telling me that smoking weed is the same and as bad as smoking cigarettes, and we got to take the same precautions? Because the answer is, that's bullshit, and stop it.
I totally agree with that
And the
assessment,
problem with
Bill.
that answer being bullshit is because it's cannabis, we haven't done the research and we don't have empirically verifiable data to show that, because we're prohibited from doing that kind of research.
I'd say that we do have that type of empirical data, because they can't point to any in particular cases to say that cannabis smoke was the cause of this type of cancer.
We do, but we don't, because we can't do studies, right? So until we can produce a study that a doctor has done that is not a preclinical study, they're going to dismiss it. They're going to find any way to any loophole that they can say, oh, we'll poke holes in this. This is bullshit, right? So like, we know because we're being reasonable about it, but we also have a very different standpoint than these people who are just vehemently against cannabis, period.
Fair enough.
Yeah, what's the phrase?
There's a distinction between outdoor and indoor use. And, we are in California after all. It's possible to have outdoor lounges, and they don't need the same strict air filtration requirements as indoor locations do. And so I think what we're going to end up seeing, because it's more economical and it's more doable, is to have covered areas that are basically, covered outdoor areas where people can ingest cannabis. It's kind of like what you see when you go to places like Budapest, where they have all these, ruined bars, and they have huge covers that cover several buildings, and then they set up a bar complex in between the open space, but it's all covered. And so when it rains, it doesn't really affect it. And in Budapest, it rains hard. In California, it doesn't rain close to as hard as it does in Eastern Europe. So I think it's really doable to have outdoor lounges almost year-round in California, because we're in California.
Yeah, fair enough.
Had them at the fair, Omar. If you went to the fair, they had that at the California State Fair. It was a tent. The sidewalls were all opened up with a stage.
Yep.
We're in there burning them.
Yep.
Okay.
All you got to do is pitch a tent.
Exactly.
That's all you got to do.
I would love to see. It's the people I represent who have an indoor space. That's where do I have to go hire an industrial hygienist and do all these calculations? It's like, really?
I need an air engineer. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh boy, we're adding to CEQA requirements. Here we go.
Yeah, here we go. Exactly.
Welcome to California.
I think Rico, I think it's time to go to Soham, Rico.